and welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lir Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. And my very special guest today is another colleague of mine in Irish dancing, all the way from Brisbane via Killarney, Breeda Peirce. Hi, Breeda.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Breeda, I remember you judged my feis some years back when you were here in Ireland visiting.
It was the first feis I judged in Ireland.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
I'm very honoured
that
you were my first.
I was delighted. Yeah.
Well, I was honoured to have you. It's always lovely as well to be able to put on the syllabus Breeda Peirce, Australia.
Yes.
You know,
makes a change. Yes.
Yeah. It's nice. But Breeda, an unusual spelling of your name, P-I-E-R-C-E.
Yeah, so it's back to front, it's PEI, because so basically, yes. My husband is English. My husband's family are English. He's Australian. He was born in Australia, but the rest of his family were they were probably, as they call them, the 10-pound immigrants who came over in the sort of 50s probably. But yeah, so the Peirce surname, his uncle has done a lot of research into the family, and they found the actual entry into the church record where the Peirce was spelt incorrectly way back in early 1800s. So that's where that came from.
That happened to us in America, particularly when Irish immigrants went over around the time of the 1845, around the time of the famine, where you had people who weren't always either they weren't able to read or write, who had gone over, or the people who were signing their names spelled it phonetically, and they wrote it as they, if they said Peirce, they'd spell it P-W-E-R-S-E or whatever, because they didn't know. I mean, my own name is Honan, but it's a derivative of Honin or Green.
Okay.
Strangely enough, Green surname, G-R-W-N or G-R-W-N-E, is a derivative of Honan, which I can't understand how it would be, but it is. It's strange the way the Irish names got changed and the spellings of them based on how they were spelt in their port of entry into the country. It's interesting. I've had so many different versions. Every time I type your name, I type it a different spelling.
Oh, I'll tell you, having been called Breeda Peirce causes, And
even Breeda, some people spell it B-R-E-D-A, and then B-R-E-D, you spell it with the double. My godmother spells it with the double D as well, or the double E, I should say, B-R-E-E. Breeda, tell me about your progress into Irish dancing. How did you get involved in Irish dancing?
So way back in Killarney, I think I was about 4 years old. So Teresa Irwin probably moved from Limerick. So Nori, my sister, had started with her, and I was about 4, and then I started off as well. And so I was that was Kogol. We were with Teresa Irwin and Kogol from the early years.
She was her.
Yes, we were. Yeah, she was Kogol in the early years. And then Nori was interested in doing her teachers, and at the time, Muriel and George Brown used to come to Killarney every year for the summer. Sure. And we got to know them quite well, and they encouraged Nori to do her commission exam. So that's where it changed. We went from, so Nori started her commission, her school in Killarney, and I actually went to classes in Tralee with Honor O'Connor for a few years. And that, so Kogol girl who became a commission girl, yes.
But John Culnan, I don't know if you were listening to the interviews I did with John. John said that, everybody at one stage, the Nolans, the O'Rourkes, he said, it's hard to imagine, he said, you say the name O'Rourke and you say Maureen Toohey and you say the Nolans and you instantly associate them with An Comisiún. But at one stage, like myself, he said, we were all Kogol and commission, both. Then Kogol asked them to split with commission. He said, Cork split down the middle, families split. you had brothers and sisters, one going Kogol, the other going commission. But Limerick all went commission or stayed commission and split from Kogol, and that's the way it happened. It's interesting that we were able to be part of both commission and Kogol. Do you know? And now we had to choose sides.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's what happened when Nori did her exam. She once she became, so she was like the first CRG teacher in Killarney, because yes, the others were Kogol at the time. So, but yeah, it's,
and now it's I'd imagine it's all a commission in Killarney.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So. Yeah, so from there, I mean, we've always had a love of Irish dancing in the family. I mean, Killarney being a tourist town, I spent all my summers doing cabarets we used to have it was literally the residency at the Great Southern Hotel in Killarney, where from March through till October, we'd do the cabaret with whatever group we're in. Yeah, so it was amazing. Always like dancing in the Glen Eagle with the Chieftains and Stockton's Wing and the Wolf Tone. So I spent all my young years dancing in hotels and in shows, and yeah, so I suppose it was sort of bred into us, the whole Irish dancing, and I probably had a break from it.
Didn't it give you a great grounding, not just in the competitive side of things, but also in the performance? And I'm sure that you as a teacher to when you're teaching your dancers, that they're not just competitive dancers, which in itself is a remarkable thing, but that they go out and they perform even when they're in competition.
Yeah. And as well as that, I mean, I love the performance side of it. We tend to do, like, even nowadays, we do a big Christmas show, we do markets, we do a lot of charity things, because I think even to be a great competitive dancer, you need to be a stage dancer as well. It is that type of thing enhances your performance.
I agree, because you can see we're only talking, you can see some amazing dancers come out, and especially at a World Championships, you could have about 20, if not more, that you could say, oh, I like her, or I like her, and somebody else could like someone else. But it's that one child that comes out and just dazzles and just has that spark, that presentation, that ability to perform and to draw you in, that separates everyone. Every child, of course, is different and impresses different judges different ways, but there's that one child that will always catch your attention.
Yeah, there's always one, isn't there? Which makes life easier when you are sitting there judging, that there is that one person who jumps out at you. I love a good performer. I love to see kids enjoying it, and so that's, as much and all as we love the competition side of it, I still want them at the end of it to walk away from Irish dancing loving Irish dancing and loving the journey they've had in Irish dancing, whether it was a good or a bad one, and whether they were great competitors or whether they were kids who just did it for the love of it. So yeah,
there are, and most of your class, it has to be said, are made up. Your bread and butter comes from the children who probably will never ever win a major or anything, but are in it purely for the love of it. And you probably have, maybe, if you're lucky, you might have 2% of your class that will actually be champions. That's if you're really lucky. So you have to cater for the child.
If you're lucky, I mean, and the thing is, very often the talented kids come in the door and they don't do the work, whereas I always say, hard work beats talent if the talent doesn't work hard. It's a very true saying. Yes.
It is, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but when you see a child and you think, oh my God, that child has everything. But one, they don't have the money for competition. They don't have the interest in competition. Their parents don't have the interest in competition. And I think you have to tick all the boxes. You have to have the parent that's passionate, that's willing to or able to put the finances behind them, the child that will work really, really hard and has the talent. And sometimes you can have a child that doesn't really have that child's talent, but work so hard that they can actually progress at a massive rate. and win.
Yes, and win. I think that's one of the beauties of teaching in Australia is that um, it's not as difficult as it is in other parts of the world because one, we're so far away from each other. And I know that from looking at people I know in Ireland and England, America, and the pressures that they're under. Yes, we have a very good competitive season over here, but the reality is the percentage of our dancers who can afford to go to the world and things is so small that we actually have to provide like a culture here for them that our national titles are their world championships, and that's how we treat it. We that is the pinnacle of our dancing year, or our state championships, because like even here a lot of people wouldn't be able to afford to fly across to Perth, which is a 5-hour flight type of thing. So yeah, so I think
God almighty,
I've
that's like
always
going to America for us.
yes, yeah. So I always think it's a little bit, even though it's quite difficult, get people to the world level, like here, because they just don't have that level of competition or the amount of competition. I think our dancers do very well and have a very nice environment that gives them a really good basis in Irish dancing. And I don't think we have as much pressure as people who would be overseas. Well, I find that from my point of view, that I can provide the dancers, we can give them what they want, but they also know that the chances are, like, what percentage go to the world from Australia? Apparent a bit more in the last few years. Obviously, nobody's going to be going for a while, I think. But and some great dancers going from Australia and great results, but it's still such a small percentage of what we would actually have in the country.
The standard I mean, the chasm that was there, I suppose, at the very beginning, and you were
Yeah,
probably there at the time when, say, there was no, if you like, the standard was at beginner level. And suddenly now you have world champions coming out
yeah, yeah.
of
Amazing. Yeah.
out of Australia, and you think, my God, what do you attribute that to? Because
I think
it is difficult for them, for dancers, as you say, from there to afford to come. And for the most part, the World Championships are either in Ireland, London, Northern Ireland, or America. It's never been in Australia. So, do you see? Firstly, do you ever see it being held in Australia?
Oh, we have got great venues for it now in Australia. And one day I would love to see it come to Australia. But the reality is, we are, 21 hours to Dublin type of thing with a couple of stops in between. The one thing in Australia is that I think the way it is built in the length of time I've been here, and I've been here now, this is my 30th year in Australia.
No, you don't look that old, honestly.
No, I am. Don't worry, I'm that old. So, but the dancers stay dancing longer. So, and maybe because they haven't that much competition, they don't have to work all year round for their early years, that by the time they get to 15 or 16, they become very self-directed to get to the world, and they'll have part-time jobs, and their aim is to get to the world. And I don't know what it is, but then when they get to senior dancers, they're fit, they're athletic, and they're able to take on that world stage. And we're seeing more and more of that. I mean, at the younger age, it's a bit more difficult because obviously the parents don't have the money. There are probably other kids, there are probably other activities. But a lot of the teenagers get there because they have part-time jobs and they work to get there. But there seems to be something about the longevity of dancers in Australia staying dancing well into their 20s, and competing at that level.
I had Brent Pace on a while back. It took me a long time to actually get the video up online because the signal, unlike with you, yours has only gone there slightly for a second, but Brent's, the signal was in and out. It was so hard, for him, on that day. But I was talking to Brent, and he was saying the same thing, that it goes, dancers do stay in dancing that bit longer in Australia. And, it got me thinking. I think the last time my last Munster Championships, I was third at the last Munsters that I competed in, and I was in Bunratty Castle as an entertainer at that time, and I still, it's just before I did my TCRG, and I was 20, I think I was 22, and I was still I still danced at the Munsters and the Worlds, and I just think, do you think that competitors are forced out, or that they leave much too young out of competition? Because I look at dancers like David Gainey, and I said it to him, God Almighty, David, when I was interviewing him, you could still be dancing, fitness level. And he said, Jesus, Mary, I'd never get through it. But I said, never is a tough word, because all you have to do is keep your level of fitness up, and you are at a level of fitness that you can keep it up. I think people leave too young, myself.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because some people do and some people will stay at it. I just think university life, it's very hard I think it's very hard staying at the top of your game in Irish dancing these days, more so than ever before, because the level of fitness that is required and the amount of extra stuff people are doing to get to that higher level. I mean, it's amazing what these dancers are doing. It's like, I mean, one of the beauties of Irish dancing, one of the things that I love about it is that, and I think we've done a very good job, that we've maintained our tradition, and even more so in the last couple of years with all the Molyneux set dances coming out, we really have maintained our tradition and culture, but we've allowed Irish dancing to develop and move with the times, which a lot of other dance forms haven't done. And that's one of the things I love. I love the new choreography. I love the excitement of seeing the new stuff at the World each year and thinking, okay, how are we going to do that and bring it back to Australia? But I still love that we stick to our basics and we have our traditional component as well.
But it's a great tribute to all of you teachers in Australia, because the idea that you have to come so far over, and you do it for the love, purely for the love, because there isn't unless you're making a living out of it, you're doing it in an area where I presume you can earn a living out of it very well in Australia, because you have such a wide expanse of space to cover, and you wouldn't be inundated with other teachers in your region. You could comfortably run your business. Here in Ireland, certainly in Limerick, there's fabulous teachers coming out of every crack and every wall. And there's a great credit due to Australian teachers who come here for the love of it and want to bring back the dancing. But I'm thinking, for people who, like you, are coming over, and we have this rule, say, in Irish dancing, where you can't video the children dancing, you can't watch, we have the association rule, and I know I was asking a lot of people about the association rule, because on one hand, I can understand why on Commission have the association rule in place for the appearance of propriety. At the other hand, I can understand what Gary Healy was talking about in his interview about it stifling the ability to run your business and to be able to work with other people, and it prevents you from learning. Now, with COVID and our the potential we have now of talking to each other, which and looking at the likes of Jimmy Smith coming on and teaching the Molyneux sets, the Molyneux steps, that has allowed us to learn from another teacher, the Molyneux steps, the Molyneux hornpipes, everyone coming on and doing a hornpipe of their own, that you're not always able to do because of the restrictions we have of association. Do you think that there is a place for us to be able to learn from each other post-COVID as teachers?
Definitely. And I actually think that the one thing that COVID has done is it's actually, we're now in a very unique position. And I think we now are in a position where we have an opportunity to look at things a little bit differently. I agree with you. There's a place for the transfer. There's a place where I don't think there is. The transfer should be there. I think one of the biggest things with Irish dancing is that you have people who run it as a business and you have people who do it for the love of it.
Yeah.
And that means people are coming from different points of view as well. And different countries do it differently. I mean, I run mine as a business. It's not going to make me retire a rich woman, but that was a choice I made, having young kids, and it was suitable for my life. But I think one of the biggest things is in Irish dancing is people have it as a business and people do it as a hobby. And so you're coming from two different places. I think with COVID, we now have a unique opportunity to step back, look at what we have and look at how we go forward, making us even more successful. I mean, in the 90s, we were handed Riverdance and Lord of the Dance, which created the opportunity for people to have businesses. Did we do enough with that? Or did we become too sort of enshrined in the competition and the dresses and the wigs, which caused a lot of...
What's your opinion? Do you think we became too enshrined?
I think we became too enshrined in the competitive side of things. I would like to see both. I think there is room for a multi-pronged approach with all associations, like whether it's ADA Inc., whether CL, like each of the bodies in each country.
I agree with you 100%. I do. Yeah. I really do. Having spoken to people, I mean, speaking to Brian Cleary, Dr. Brian Cleary from CRN the other day, and I thought we'd never have spoken to each other but for, I suppose, my interviews and the fact that we were forced into it through COVID. I just think we can learn so much from each other.
We can from each other, yeah.
You know, yeah. And I think that that's the one negative that I see with the association rule, and the one negative I see with us not being able to bridge the gap between COGOL, CRN, WIDA, whoever, and us, that it's that collegiality. It makes, I think we're better as dancing teachers and as dancers when we can learn from each other. And I think that COVID has proven that, and maybe these interviews have proven that we have so much in common and we can learn so much from each other and make the art form better and businesses better. But I think
we have to learn.
I do understand that there has to be some sense of honesty, and that's why Commission feel that they have to have that association rule in place.
It's a lot of the stuff is protection of members, and there are reasons for a lot of the rules that are in place. I think with COVID, we're now in the position where we have to look after keeping people teaching dancing, because we're not anywhere in Australia or in America or in Ireland. I'm sure we're nowhere near the financial impact that this is going to have on people. I think it's a long way to go. I mean, we're talking about vaccines next year, but will they have a vaccine next year? Will it work?
Will it be safe?
I think we have to look at promoting and keeping our dance form. I mean, looking at it from an Australian point of view, we have people who won't be able to go back to Ireland to visit their families. We have people who won't have the money to do it, even if they could do it. So I think from a cultural point of view, they're going to look at the Irish organisations within our country, probably the same in America, and well, probably not so much Europe because that's so much closer. But I think places like Australia and America, with the distance factor, will find that people might start looking at the Irish organisations, be it dance or music or whatever, and I can see a bit of a resurgence. And like Australia, we're having an online, we got a status from the Commission to do, we have Camp Connect happening in the next couple of weeks, where we have some online classes, and we've opened it up for under fives, for beginner kids, right through to adults. And yes, there's like over 500 people have logged on to do sessions in the next couple of weeks. And over, I think, Fiona McAleer is running an under 5 class next Sunday, which has, when I looked last night, had 75 people logging on. Yeah. So there's definitely an interest. We put it. This isn't just open to Irish dancing schools. This
How
has
is that
been
going to work
put up.
for people, say in America or in the UK or in Ireland or anywhere in the
Uh,
world who want to
well, it
follow suit?
yeah. Yeah, well, it was we put together Ada Inca put together a marketing committee, which I'm on with people from all over from the different states, and just from that we came up with this idea of having this um, some sort of thing for all levels of dancers, and as we said, CLRG very nicely gave us a camp, like a status, an open status. So it's called Camp Connect, um, and it's a great
Fabulous.
idea, and we've put it together. It's come together in a month, and as I said, like as looking at it today, there were over 500 people, and as I said, I think probably over 100 or under five, and then there's another. So Fiona McAleer, who has written the Jump and Jig program, she's doing that
And
on
how's that
Monday.
going to
One of the
work though? Explain to me the dynamics of it. Explain to me how you actually can actually teach under fives online, because I was talking, I'm trying to think who I was talking to, and they were saying, that they would find it very difficult. Because I was asking the question about having online competitions, because that Gary or Michael Dillon brought up the subject of online competitions, online
yeah,
feshional,
yes,
and
yeah,
it's and the problems I'd see with that would be in the timing, with the music being out of sync with.
yeah,
But I do know that there are people who are actually running their own class feshes.
yeah, yeah,
Actually, Brian Cleary with CRN, they said that what they're doing is they have they have a Bungrod or a beginners world championship, basically. They
wow,
have
yeah,
say, for our in our terminology, a Tusgrod and a Mangrod and a Nordgrod. So
yeah,
every child in every grade gets to have their own world championships, and they also started bringing in these grades. So each child has to do a certain dance, and they they send in a video through
yeah,
COVID of them dancing St. Patrick's Day, and they're graded on it based
yeah,
on the video, and it's keeping them occupied. And
yeah,
it's great to hear these how
yeah.
other organizations are and how you're tackling it.
Yeah, well, I think the America has also done the proficiency for the traditional set dances. They've been doing that as an online thing over the COVID period, and I think Australia is going to try and do something like that after this. But we have like Victoria, like down in Melbourne, they're in lockdown. They're going to be in lockdown. They're now going to be Melbourne's going to be officially the longest lockdown in the world, even more so than in China and Italy, because their lockdown looks like it's going to be extended now right through till the end of October. So I think everybody felt we needed to do something to engage these children who are in lockdown, and people have done amazing things. I mean, like for Camp Connect, so you have Fiona doing the the introduction for under fives. Jonty Moore is running a beginners class. Two of the girls who teach with me, Christine and Bridget, are both one's doing a beginner class, one's doing the other under five class, because she's an early childhood educator. So combining with her TCRG, it makes her the ideal person for the job. And then we have somebody who's doing like Louise Lasala, who is a teacher in Melbourne. She's doing like the social media awareness and just a bit of sports psychology. And then Natasha Petrasic, who's one of the leads in Riverdance, is doing some conditioning and fitness. And then Jess Hindley's coming on talking about, journey to getting to be a world champion. So, and we have some people on doing like Liam Ayres and Connor Ayres, and one of the other teachers in Brisbane, Charlotte Sweeney, are doing some adult classes. So we've tried to provide something for everyone, and I think it's a great initiative, but it's taken a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of work to pull it off, but it's work. Hopefully it could be a template for everybody else.
That's exactly it. But how do you focus the under 5-year-old? Which is what a lot of people were finding, that it's hard enough to focus them inside in a class when you're one-to-one with them. How do you focus the 5-year-old?
Well, you see, it's one-to-one. Well, that's because within the Zoom thing, it is one-to-one. So basically, the teacher's running the class on her own with all the props that they need, and the kids follow suit. It's we have the jump, as you see, it's up in your background there. We do jump and jig as part of our school, and I'm amazed at how it's an untapped area that we've never. I mean, I've always taught maybe 4-year-olds, 3.5 to 4. But we had a class this morning, and it has 4 2-year-olds in it, and the 2-year-olds were amazing.
Oh my God, almighty.
It's the repetition. These were live, but we did run some online classes for them when we were in lockdown, and they lived for it every week, according to the parents. They would be ready at that TV on their iPads to follow the class. So
I can just imagine.
Yeah, they love it. Yeah.
You sent me some fantastic photographs. But what was I going to say to you? Something I brought up to Kathleen and James McLaughlin, and I suppose I don't use notes when I'm doing these interviews. I just take my cues from what people say and listen. But I was just talking to Kathleen McLaughlin about what they would think about the idea of, both of them are primary school teachers. And when you're doing your primary school teaching course, certainly here, and you probably know that from Mary Immaculate College here in Limerick, which is the college I taught in. I'm not a primary school teacher, I'm third level, but with the primary school teaching and the secondary school teaching, you've got to do a HDIP. So you've got to learn the pedagogical approaches, how to deal, the psychology, how to deal with not just the child who might be difficult, or the child who might be withdrawn in a class, but also to deal with parents and to deal with the unusual expectations some parents might have inside in the class, or the demands, or irrational, I suppose, behavior, or anything that you're dealing with in a class. Do you think that, for teachers studying for their TCRG and that it would be beneficial for once, or even for any teacher, even like us who are teaching a long time, to be able to maybe have an annual or a biannual course with An Comisiún, a weekend where you could be taught by teachers who are already, there's a fly gun around there, who are already, who have gone through that process, done the HDIP, to actually run a course within An Comisiún that everybody could attend, maybe annually or biannually, where they could learn the pedagogical approaches to deal with it. Because you're thrown into it after doing your
thrown in, Yeah.
And it's just, you're thrown into a class, and unless you have a co-teacher, you're just thrown into a class where you might have a load of parents who are just making
But I think that's why we have a lot of teachers who've actually qualified as teachers and who they might start a class, but like, how many times have you seen classes start up but they don't actually stay the distance? I was given really good advice, not when I started teaching Irish dancing, but when I was nursing, by one of the nursing sisters in the ward that I started at Cork Regional Hospital, which is now University College. And I was in the paediatric ward, and I was probably only 3 months into my training. And she said, the one thing you remember about a child is that you might look at it as a patient, but that child is the parent's whole world. And it's the same in Irish. Yeah, it's the same in Irish dancing. Whenever you're speaking to a parent about a child, I always have that at the back of my head. You might want to say that, their behavior isn't acceptable or whatever. You might want to say that they're not the most talented person in the world.
Yeah.
But always at the back of my mind is that bit of advice that that child is that person's whole world. So whenever you say something, you've got to keep that in mind. And I think it's really hard for young teachers. And I see the change. 30 years ago, kids coming into class are very different to the kids coming into class these days.
Even remember in our own time in dancing. I mean, I used to be thrown out of the class regularly for talking. Sometimes I wasn't talking, but somebody was, and Mary Honan,
Mm.
who I was one of the younger ones in the class, would be Maureen O'Rourke. Go home, Mary Honan. I was miles from home. I'd have to get 2 buses to get home. But I'd go out the door and come back in the other door because I loved her. And I knew she was for my own good. Wouldn't do that now.
No, I actually, at the worst that's ever been said to me, I had a 5-year-old telling me that I was being paid to teach her. So 5 years old. Yes. And I said, oh, not paid enough, darling. So, but yeah, I actually had that said to me
I think
by a 5-year-old.
The funniest story I heard was from Jimmy Smith when he said a child came into his class to learn, and he was teaching her, and he was walking her by the hand up and down, doing her 1, 2, 3s with her, and he was charging, I think it was €7, which is very little, and she gave him half of it at the end of class, and he said nothing. And the next day, the same thing. She gave him half, and he said, darling, he said, it's not that. He said, it's €7. And she said, oh, my mommy said when I can do it to music, you'll get the full amount. So he
Love it.
So it was sorry to say this now, but it was a Kerry Kerry problem. He put the music on and he ran the child around the room dancing. He said her legs were going everywhere. She was only 2 days into the class, her legs were everywhere. And he said, now, darling, he said, you did it to music. So he got his €7.
He got his, yes. I can just imagine Jimmy as well. Yes. But yeah, I mean, times have definitely changed when you're dealing with kids, and there's definitely probably, a need for people to have a bit of support. But I think that's one of the beauties of Irish dancing, and we can be competitive when it comes to the competition, but off the stage we're all the best friends in the world, and we have the biggest of friends in Irish dancing all over the world. I mean, you could be competitive when you're on stage, but for the rest of the time you actually make friends for life. And even as dancers, it's the same thing. You're a competitive dancer, but then when you finish dancing, these people are your friends well and truly for the rest of your life. And I think the Irish Dancing Associations right around the world are supportive of their members in good and bad times. So that's one of the beauties, I think, of our organisation is that the friendships and the people we know. Like, you could go anywhere in the world, but Mary, and you'd know somebody. So from Irish dancing. So.
But this is it. I mean, you kind of feel. I don't know. You kind of feel that if you were just say in Brisbane, and you were getting a flight, and something happened, and you had all you could do would be to pick up the teacher's
pick up the book,
and find, or you had landed in Brisbane. And this is another thing, I suppose, I keep going back to the association rule, but I think it's probably because we've started talking to each other, and we're, you find what you're just saying to yourself, you're just able to just pick up a phone, and it doesn't matter who the school is or what, you can just pick them up and say, look, I'm after landing in Brisbane. I don't know anyone.
Yep.
Can we meet for a coffee?
Yeah, it would easily happen.
And you're able to. My mother lived in England. I was born in England, and my dad was English, and she felt completely isolated. She wasn't part of the Irish dancing world. My mum was a singer, and she went to England from a small little area here where I live still today in their house, but. It was a tiny little area. They didn't have a key to she lost the key to her door. The neighbors could come in and get milk if they were short milk or sugar while she was away. She didn't have it locked. And she went to London, and she said she used to be walking up and down the street, and she'd be saluting people, and they'd be looking at her as if like, who is this woman? But she felt very isolated. And if she had been part of the Irish dancing world and could, she would have been able to adjust to life. What was life like for you when you moved to Brisbane first?
Very much like that I knew, like, obviously we moved back because Tony's from this part of Brisbane, north, which is Redcliffe, just north of Brisbane. And so I knew Tony and I knew Tony's parents. And other than that, I didn't know anybody else in the country. And it wasn't long afterwards, it was actually Tony's suggestion that maybe I should try and contact the Irish dancing world. And I said to him, I said, I had been out of Irish dancing because I'd been working in London, I'd been nursing, and I hadn't done anything with Irish dancing except when I'd go home and I'd go into Norris class and things like that and help out if and I always had that side of it. And I said, you're going down it's a funny road, because I said, there's no halfway in Irish dancing. It's in or out. You either do it or you don't. There's no doing it badly. But anyway, I rang up. There was a number in the telephone book, like the secretary of the Irish Dancing Association, and it was Yvette Jackson, who is from Limerick.
Okay.
And straight away invited me for a cup of tea, invited me into a meeting. I was a guest at their meeting. I mean, I hadn't qualified or anything, but I was able to get a temporary, that was back in the day of temporary registrations. And yeah, and I always say that if somebody else had answered the phone who wasn't an Irish person, I don't know whether I'd be still teaching Irish dancing or whether I'd have been as involved. But literally within a few months, I was helping them at competitions. I did their scrutineering. I did, I helped out wherever I could. I will say that early on in the piece, Christine Porpry had moved into Brisbane around the same time as I moved in, and she she's been the president of Ada Inc. a number of times and everything. She was such a mentor to me as somebody to run things by who wasn't a teacher. She didn't have a dancing school, but she knew all the rules and she was so helpful. I mean, but so many people were helpful. I mean, people everywhere. Like, there was no teacher in Brit. Like, all the teachers were very happy for me to come on board and jump in and help in competitions and things. And then I started teaching, and yeah, it was. But like Jan Curry, Jan Byrne, Kathy Cosgrove, Carmel Doyle, you name it. Maureen Whelan.
Jan Curry was a star. I had her on.
Oh, she would be.
She just
amazing.
There's some people that you meet in life and they have an impact on you,
Totally.
on your life. And
yeah,
Jan Curry was one of those, and Annie McBride. I mean, people like that. And you say, God Almighty, the wealth of knowledge. And Jan Curry is just, she's a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, totally.
Women like that, who just shoot from the hip and don't tolerate. My own mother, I think, was like that. Didn't tolerate fools gladly. And what you saw was what you got, and straight down the line. But
so helpful. I mean, such a helpful person. Yeah.
And I think that's what I loved about Jan Curry Henderson. Just no nonsense. There are people, she said, in commission, she said, and I don't like, and I was just kind of like, and they don't like me. And I thought, I just, oh, wow.
She says she's been around too long. She's not afraid to say anything anymore, because that's what's the point? I may as well say it. But I mean, that's the thing about Australia. So that was the 1990. And like when I went to my first nationals, or I went to the first convention, people were amazing. They were so welcoming. Brendan Tiernan was amazing. Like, so many people were helpful. They were like, this is, ring me if you need anything, if you need to know the rules, and things like that. And, they couldn't have been more helpful. Here in Queensland, people were so helpful. So things, over the years, I think it got a bit more competitive and things changed a bit, but no. It probably changed our lives. Sometimes I'm sure my husband thinks that it may not have been a good idea, but yeah.
How have you seen many changes over the years since you got involved, I suppose, in Irish dancing in Australia?
Totally. I mean, we had there are now over 260 teachers in Australia, which is huge so huge number of people.
I have to say, I love your girls' feet.
Yeah, Chloe, yes. That photo's from the All Ireland.
Pardon?
That's photos from the All Ireland last
Yeah,
year.
I have to say, I just thought, wow, you know, I'm a feet.
Oh,
Um,
I'm feet. Yeah. Yes.
just feet.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love good basics, and I love a
Yes.
slip jig to be a slip jig and a reel to be,
Oh,
and a hornpipe to be a
be a
hornpipe.
home. Yes.
And
Yes. Yeah.
Sean or Brian Cleary was talking yesterday or the other day about from CRN about, you know, he likes, you know, he doesn't like the way set dance music, he said, is going, that jigs are masquerading as hornpipes and vice versa, and reels are
Yeah. That's
masquerading as slip jigs. I'm very much, I like it,
well.
you
Yeah.
know,
The
to
slip jig.
reflect
The slip jig is the one
my
that
dance. Yeah,
I object to most. When a
yeah,
reel is done as a slip jig, I'm like, no,
yeah, yeah.
But I think the basics of Irish dancing should still be the important thing. The footwork is important. And I mean, I don't care how much people jump in the air or what they do. If you're going to do it with straight feet, it's like wasted
Totally wasted.
on a lot of us.
But
Yes.
isn't that what COVID has done? And Zoom dance classes, because you know,
Yes.
talking to,
Take it back to basics.
you can focus somebody if you're a
Yes.
driller like I am. You can
Yeah.
actually have a child in front of you and just say, look, just
Yeah.
turn your feet out, work and
Yeah.
work and work and work on your feet, and you can drill. It's great for
Yeah.
people who are drillers, but not so good if you don't like drilling.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because we had obviously about 10 weeks in a lockdown with Zoom classes, and we can't believe how some of our man-growed intermediate dancers have come out of it so much better. Yet some of our open dancers who should, you would think, we're still getting the same teach, have gone backwards. So it's an interesting, we were able to keep, it's interesting how different people handled it and
Yeah.
how the different personalities handled. And we had two teams going to the world this year, so they were devastated. They'd worked, with two A-times going to the world. That never happens. So we had
Very
dancers who
quiet,
were
yeah.
devastated, and like even picking them up from that, it's really quite difficult. But then on the other hand, we have these, primary and intermediate kids who've just blossomed through the Zoom classes from all the drilling. So
I think I
there's
would have,
something to be learned
I
from the
liked
whole
drilling,
experience.
and I liked being drilled. And
Yeah.
and Tony Tyrrell, a friend of mine, I don't know, did you know Tony, but he taught Mandy Hannigan, and she won
Oh yes. Yep.
her
Yep.
4 worlds with Tony. And Tony was a driller. And I mean, Tony would constantly ring me up. I mean, he'd ring me every night. And sometimes he'd be on the phone he'd often say to me, Mary, is that you snoring? Because I'd actually go to bed in the middle of it. He'd be on the phone so long talking
Yeah. Yeah.
about Irish dancing and talking about drilling and this and that.
Yeah.
And Mandy said it to me one day. She said he was the best driller you ever could
Yeah.
come across,
Yeah.
because he'd make that do their lead around, side step, and the two steps. And if they got tired, he'd make them go back and do it again from the
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
And then if that wasn't good enough, back again from the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would have loved a teacher like that, because
Yeah.
if I thought I could get away with it, I would. I was just.
I think that's what most people are like in
I
class.
had the feet. But I didn't have. I was, I think I was probably lazy, and I just admire the child who has the talent and is just. But I think I needed somebody to drill.
Yeah.
That was the type of person I was, and
Yes.
the type of teacher I am. I like the drilling side of it. I don't like the creating the steps. How do you
See, I
find?
think. Sorry,
Sorry.
I missed that.
No, go on. How do you find when you go to a competition and you're trying to learn from, especially when you're living in Australia and you don't have the proliferation of teachers there, and the competitions, and you come to the Ireland and you're not allowed to video at competitions, and you're not allowed back again, I suppose, to the association. You're not allowed to benefit from other teachers' knowledge to advance your class.
Well, that's why we use we have like, well, I've always had the relationship obviously with Nori and
Yeah.
Anya with when it was Sheehan Murphy, but we've also, well, I mean, we've used Sharon Taylor for our workshops for a number of years,
Okay.
and yeah, and that is the only way we can keep up to date,
Yeah,
because
Sharon is coming
you know,
on.
yeah,
Sharon is going to be
yeah,
coming on the Zoom with me,
yeah,
along with
yeah.
her.
So Sharon comes and but as well as that, not only just for it's not just for the kids. Like I have 3 teachers who teach with me. All 3 of them are my pupils. So so they've, you know, and when they started
I think we benefit so much from each other and from learning
each
from each
other,
other. And
yes,
looking at
and
Jimmy's,
yeah,
looking at
but
Jimmy's is
yeah,
remarkable. Looking at each
yeah,
other's hornpipes, trad hornpipes on Michael Dillon's page,
yeah,
it is a joy.
yes, and that has been such a good page. The whole, you know, teachers, Irish dancing teachers, like, and it's not just CRG teachers, it's all the teachers. That page has been so beneficial, and people have shared so much information. I've used so much of that stuff, and that page has been great during the whole COVID um, experience. I mean, we're very lucky in Queensland. I mean, we're back teaching. I was at a fesh at the weekend. I've got another fesh next weekend. So I mean, yeah, we're literally. I mean, if things keep going, we can actually have our qualifiers, whether it's going to be worth anything for anybody else.
That'd be
But we can
fantastic.
actually run our state championships next month. So we're back at class and we're back doing everything, and obviously we're being very careful when there's 101 rules, and like even every time you go to class, I've never cleaned so much in my life, because you've got to, you know, do so much cleaning, because you have to protect the kids, and you have to, you know, I mean, the COVID safe plans that we have in place, and the amount of checking within Brisbane on COVID plans, you just can't take the risk. And you caught doing the wrong thing here, the fine is about $6,000. So everybody does the right thing. Yes. So yeah, and they just hand those fines out. They don't care. So,
How many are you?
but we're living, yeah.
How many are you allowed in your classes?
It depends on the number, how big the venue is. So, and I teach in 3 different areas, so the numbers are different in each area.
That's
And there's a
the way it
different,
should be.
yes, yeah,
That's the way it should be. That's such a rational
yeah,
approach.
yeah.
Here,
So I can have about, in my main studio, because I lease a building, I can have up to 20 in that. I don't do it. I keep it at about 12, because I actually think they need more space than what. Yeah. So there's one class of the open ones which runs at about 14, 15. But the other classes are about 10 per room.
but that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
That's so the way it should be, because
Yeah.
because here in this country the ruling is idiot. Frankly, it's idiotic. I mean, you're
Yeah.
allowed 5 people
That's
in a
ridiculous.
pod, and
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mary McCarthy in Cork now, her hall is
Huge, probably.
enormous. It's
Yeah.
just simply enormous, and she could comfortably have 30 children inside in the class, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They'd be easily a meter apart from each other. And you
Yeah.
know the way Irish dancing is.
Yeah.
You have to maintain a distance.
A distance,
Because
absolutely.
if
Yes.
you bump
Yeah.
up against each other, you can lose marks if it's deemed
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
deliberate or avoidable. And by nature of the art form, you have to maintain a distance, and 5 in a pod. Linda Ball was talking to me now, and a class that she'd have for 2 hours every day, she now has to do for nearly 4 hours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that means she's got to pay for 4 hours instead of 2 hours, and have less children in the class. So she's going home probably not covering the price of the hall.
Venue. Yeah. Yeah. Well, all our classes, yeah, we've had to like extend the classes to make it work, but we're not doing any teams at the moment because we can't. So we've taken that team time and we've made and so we've just divided the classes up. So, but as you say, you're teaching the longer hours for way less money.
And I don't get it. I don't get it, because there's been rugby matches. Munster played Leinster the other day, and they're all inside in a rugby scrum. And I just don't get how they can how a rugby match can be held how soccer matches can be held, but yet children can't go into an Irish dancing class and sit inside, or any child can't go in, and or a team can't compete. I don't get it. How an 8-hand can't compete and shake and catch hands in the lead around or whatever, or but yet you can have a rugby match and go in a scrum.
Yes. I think a lot of the outdoor sport is going well here as well, but it's just the rules are different for things inside. So I mean, I'm quite happy that we're back teaching, and you know, I just think we need to try and maintain the kids and maintain the business, and so basically write off this year, as you know, it's just going to be a lot of work for very little money. So yeah.
But we learn a lot.
We're lucky. We're lucky.
We might learn a lot as an organization from this year about everything, about how to approach Irish dancing, to not be so reliant on competition, to maybe have more cultural events where people can take part in music, in dance, in drama, Irish drama, and I say that as somebody who I'm an associate of the Victoria College in London in drama, and I just think that there's so many ways that you can involve children in post-COVID.
Well, I think we'll have to maintain them and things like that. Well, I think we'll have to actually maintain the Irish dancing to the, you know, it's going to be a while before we're back to what we were able to do. So in the meantime, we have to find a way of keeping them engaged and keeping them dancing and not doing something else. So I think that's the biggest hurdle for CLRG at the moment, is how do we maintain, because how many teachers are we going to lose? How many judges are we going to lose? How many people are going to walk away from Irish dancing? And how many dancers financially and just not being able to work to the level of competition that they like, how many people are we actually going to lose? So I think the biggest hurdle is how do we maintain what we have, and what do we need to do going forward to make it work.
You have an astonishing number. I was blown away by the amount of teams you have, or you seem to have. Because just looking there alone, I mean, I don't know if they're all the same girls.
No. So I tend to work, we tend to run about, we would only ever have 60 to 80 kids a year dancing. So, and it's been like that. That's the number that seems to work for us around the 3 different areas I teach in. But we always have like an under 10 team, an under 12 team, an under 16, and a senior team. So, and because here we do 2-hand and 3-hand choreographies and 4-hand choreographies. So, we actually have, and we love teams in the school. So every kid who dances solos has to do teams. So you can't just choose one. Yeah, and people disagree with, but I think it's good for them
because it teaches children. And I was always a solo dancer, and I think I was in about 3 teams: the Limerick Lace Workers with Tony Nolans, and a cross high call cap. I can remember the high call cap and the 4-hand. But other than that, and I think when it comes to doing your exam, you're at a disadvantage because you've got to learn the books entirely from start to finish and off by heart. Like poems, but all these children are taught to be team players as well as being individual dancers, that it's not just all about them, it's about being part of the team and part of the school. You're the perfect person to ask this question. John Cannan was talking about how sadly figure dancing he sees figure dancing as being in a huge decline over the years, and he attributes it in part, he said, to the way figure dancing has gone now, with all the sharp hand movements and all the up and down movements and out and back and all these, as he says, show dancing. It's turned out to be more show dancing now than figure dancing, and he thinks that he said he attended a Kogol competition there a while back, and he said it had huge numbers, but he said it was like looking at figure dancing in the 70s, Everyone was doing it very traditionally, and it lasted. What do you think of that? And do you think that figure dancing would last a bit longer if we actually return to the traditional way of doing figure dancing?
I really liked the idea coming forward by the CLRG with the two options, where, you know, they were looking at, there was going to be like two levels of figure dancing, because I think we've done one figure in at an Australian level, and that was fun and it was great, but it took a huge amount of work. But the amount of time I would have to put into a figure now to compete at the level that the other figures are, at what we're seeing at an Australian level or at a world level, I don't have the time to do that. With, you know, I can get five, I can have an 8-hand in every age group, I can have a 2-hand, a 3-hand, a 4-hand. Yes. So, but I loved the idea by CLRG having the two options, where you might have had which I was hoping would be more of a traditional figure, and the figures we're seeing, because I love them. I love the ones we see today, and I think it's what I love about Irish dancing, is that we maintain our tradition, but we also, you know, we continue to expand and we continue to develop. So I would hate to see those figures going, because, oh my God, I sit at the world and love them, but I see a place for both as well. And I would probably fit into the traditional style of a figure, because that'd be something I could do, as opposed to the show style ones.
So
but yeah, I think there's a place for both.
Yeah, there should perhaps be two competitions.
Well, I think that's what they were suggesting.
And,
happening.
And that would work, where likes of you who could come over with your traditional.
Because that would be me. Yes.
Slot into that competition, and then the more progressive, if you like. Which, you know, it strikes me as a strange word, because you know, progressive. What is progressive? Is it always progressive to move on? Sometimes the traditional is every bit as nice, if not nicer, than, you know, I look at.
But if we can maintain both.
I look at buildings, and they're not beautiful buildings, and they build new ones, and they say it's all in the efforts of progress. Progress is only progress if you're putting something there that's equally as beautiful as what you've taken away. And for the most part, they are. I mean, the figures at the Worlds are just
amazing,
absolutely spectacular. But so are the traditional ways of doing it, and it would be nice to see a traditional competition and a progressive figure, and maybe that would actually encourage more people to actually put together.
But they're hard work. They take so much time, and they're hard work. Oh, you need like a class a week to do one to the level of, you know, and hours and hours. Yes, and the music and everything else, and like we're probably more, you know, we're a bit spoiled now with our Fesh app, and we've got access to so much stuff, and it's great. So
John was saying the Cayley teams doesn't seem to have suffered to the same extent.
No, and not in Australia. Our Cayley in Australia is huge. Like you know, you go to, I think every time the judges come out to judge the nationals, they're always thinking, like, you know, they might have 50 forehands to judge, or, you know, you can have 28. Like, there are big competitions, our Cayley teams, at a national level. So, and that's one of the other things about Australia, is that it really has, you have so many schools. It's dwindled a bit in the last few years. There doesn't seem to be as many teams, but there is a deep love of Cayley in Australia, and we do and they still love our choreography. So there's a bit of a traditional element in Australia that is good, that you maintain that lovely level of traditional stuff. Everybody learns a forehand. You don't have people who are just solo dancers. So I do like that about it.
Forehands. John again was talking about. Oh, I've lost the name of it. I'm not sure if he called it the Glencar forehand, but there's a woman coming on with me from Australia that and he said that she taught it, and it was he said the forehand we are doing, or we know, is the Kerry forehand,
Oh, right. Okay.
And this particular forehand was I think he said the Glencar forehand,
Okay.
and she did it in Australia, and he said it's a beautiful forehand, and I said, wouldn't it be nice if, like with the figures, that there was an option that you could do one or other of the forehand
Yeah.
reels. It would be really nice for variety. That's
Yeah.
every now and again you'd see somebody coming out. I think it's I'll have to look back on it now to get the or I have to ask him to remind me now of the name of the forehand. But
Oh, yeah. That's
it was very interesting. But Breeda, before we go, I love your class costumes.
Oh, thank you. Actually, one of the mums in my class made that. So Sean O'Brien, the musician, was my pupil.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, and so his mum, because his brother and his sister dance as well, but his mum started making dresses for her own daughter, and then eventually she does amazing dresses. But she made those particular dresses for the world team that we took to Montreal, and they got
I love
9,
the
the
simplicity of
seniors.
them. I love
Beautiful.
I
We
love
loved it. Yeah,
the nod to, because
yeah,
I suppose as a designer, I was kind of like, always saying that I love the costumes the way they've gone. I love
yeah.
the glitz and the glamour, but I think there's room for, a nod to
Tradition. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the the um, the Book of Kells, the tradition,
yeah,
and
yeah,
still be contemporary, ultra
yeah,
contemporary, but have that reference to the Book of Kells, and I think
yeah.
that's what I see
I
in
love, yes.
yours.
And the crocheted colors that are on those dresses
Yeah,
came off the very first team dresses my dancers had in 1992. So, and they were put on those, we took them off those old dresses to put on and just, starched and bleached them to put them on
it's
these
really a
ones.
very postmodernist approach to
Yes.
the costume, because you're really
Yeah.
drawn from the past
Past
and
too. Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
inform the present. That's what I love. I love that. I love the simplicity of that. I love the fact that
Thank you. Yeah.
they're modern, but they're also,
Yeah.
the traditional is in there. And for the most part, I think that's what I love about the class costumes as well.
Yeah.
Is,
There is always that bit of tradition.
all
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
class costumes, I think, have held on to that little bit of tradition.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yes.
And
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, so
Mm,
but
yeah.
Breeda,
Oh,
thank
that happens
you
all the time. Yeah.
so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for
Oh,
having me. It's nice to talk to you. Yes.
yeah, and it was a pleasure having you to judge my fashion. It's a pleasure
Oh,
having you on be my guest.
and we'll hopefully get back to Ireland sometime soon.
Oh,
So
when you
it
get
seems,
back,
yes,
give me a buzz. We'll
yes,
go for coffee or something.
definitely. And
And
if you're ever
we'll
in
have
Brisbane,
halfway between
yes,
Killarney and Limerick,
yeah,
or even I'll drive to
yes,
Killarney.
yeah.
but Breeda, thank you very much, and
Thank you,
continued
Mary. Thank
success
you.
to you and everyone in Australia, with the Irish
Yeah,
dancing in Australia.
yeah. Well, and thank you again. This is wonderful. I hope you enjoyed it as much. I really enjoyed it. So yes, I hope
Oh,
it was,
listen, you
yeah,
have no
good.
idea. I mean, it's gone well over the hour.
Oh
And,
dear.
no,
Oh,
and that was
always talking too much.
listen, I mean, it's great when you have someone to talk to that's not afraid to
Yeah.
talk. And
Oh,
everyone I've had on so far are just chatters, which is
yeah.
fantastic.
That's what you need. Yes.
Yeah, you never have anything shorted to,
Yeah.
never a shortage of something to say,
No, no.
which is great.
Oh well.
Thank you again. God bless.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you for having
Bye
me.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye.
Bye bye.